Hey, how's it going? My name is James, and today I'm going to be talking about John Gwynn's The Shadow of the Gods. This is John Gwynn's newest series. It is a Norse mythology-inspired fantasy epic, and it takes place in the world of Vigrid. I hope I'm saying that right. Which is basically, according to Norse mythology, which the only reason that I know this is because I watched other people talk about this, and people who are smarter than me knew that Vigrid was basically the battlefield of Ragnarok, which is like the Norse apocalypse. This is also my first John Gwynn book that I've ever read, and it was really a great first book, I think. I mean, I know that the Bloodsworn saga is supposed to be a trilogy, and so I have 2 more books to look forward to. I actually already have the second book and have been reading that this week. I know that he also has a 4-book series called The Faithful and the Fallen, and then I actually won a copy of A Time of Dread from Petrick Leo here on YouTube. So I'll probably be digging into those eventually. I have a lot of other stuff that I want to read this year. After Shadow of the Gods and the way the Hunger of the Gods is going, John Gwynn has definitely moved up my priority list of stuff that I want to get through this year, because wow, did I love this book. From really beginning to end, it was such a fast-paced adventure. Given that this is the first time that I've read John Gwynn and I have nothing to compare it to, I'm thoroughly impressed. Everybody keeps saying that his writing just keeps getting better and better and better. And so I don't know what that means for future books that I'll read. I don't know if it'll feel like taking a step back, which, again, from what everybody says about The Faithful and the Fallen, I don't think that that's going to be the case. It sounds like he was already a great writer and is just getting greater. Waiting on my wife to stop using the microwave. I wanted to take a second to talk about the world a little bit, because it is one of the more unique settings that I think that I've read since I've been reading again. Just a little brief pause. The whole reason I started this channel is because I kind of took a break from reading unintentionally. I used to read a lot whenever I was in high school and middle school, and then college kind of came, and I guess, you know, you get busy like you do, and so I just didn't read as much. But here lately, my wife and I both have kind of been making reading much more of a priority, and through a bunch of different channels here on YouTube, I've kind of discovered a lot of really great fantasy. I figured that there was just Game of Thrones, basically, which isn't really my thing. But to know that there is stuff like this being written, that's really, really encouraging. I've been reading again for probably about a year now, and this is probably one of the best books that I've read in that year. Definitely in my top 10. One of the things that I loved about this book so much was just how unique the setting was. You don't see a lot of Norse-inspired fantasy, or at least, again, I haven't read a lot of Norse-inspired fantasy, maybe that's the better way to put it. And so for me, just the setting alone was a breath of fresh air. I will say it was a little difficult at first with the amount of Norse terminology. I'm not, like I said, I don't know a lot about Norse culture or their mythology, and so basically just things that I've picked up through osmosis from, you know, I think I watched a season of Vikings one time, so some of that stuff was kind of left over. Like Drakkars, I kind of knew that that was a boat. I don't know what the boat looks like, but I knew it was a boat. And so whenever they were making it sound like a big boat, cool, Drakkar, big boat. Got it. I did have to Google a few things. Like, I didn't know what a sax was, and I kept pronouncing it in my mind as sea axe. And so I thought that it was like an axe that they would use like on the boat for like cutting ropes or something. But to find out it's more like a machete was just something that I probably would not have figured out ever. And so a little bit of that took some adjusting to just get used to it. And after I Googled all the words that I didn't know, which is more my problem, I guess, I actually found it immersive, the amount of Norse words that he used, because it means he's not really holding your hand. And I think that's something that I really like, is when an author just kind of doesn't downplay the intelligence of his audience. He shows, he doesn't tell, and I love that. It's something, one of my other favorite series that I have started recently is Malazan, and that's something that Steven Erikson does. Yeah, we'll have another video about Malazan, I'm sure. I'll talk about Malazan in depth. But John Gwynne does that in this book a lot. So I don't even know if I'm going to keep any of this rant about Norse words in the video. All that to say, the world, just the setting alone was so interesting, and it provided, in my opinion, just the perfect backdrop for the characters that we meet. I have to say that 2 of the 3 characters were really great. That I loved them pretty much all the way throughout. And one of them didn't hook me at first, but I kind of came to like her. First character I wanted to talk about is Varg, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I could be mistaken. Nope, I was wrong. Orca has the first chapter. We'll talk about Orca in a second. Varg was probably my favorite character, just with the themes of his chapter and the journey that he goes on. I am a sucker for the vengeance arc trope. It's something that I just don't get tired of reading. I love watching people who have been wronged stick it to the people who wrong them. Maybe that's super messed up to have that opinion. I don't know. Maybe it's not. There goes the microwave. Anyway, like I said, yeah, I love watching people who have been wronged stick it to the people who wronged them, and I'm not ashamed of it. Honestly, I'm gonna say that out loud. I'm not ashamed of it. It's super satisfying to follow somebody on that journey, and that is kind of what Varg's story initially seems like it's going to be, is just this vengeance arc. It's just this vengeance arc, and it kind of evolves into something a little bit more, to where the vengeance arc actually takes a little bit of a back seat, and it becomes more about friendship and a found family and just purpose, really. And I love that. He is the only male perspective, but he's also the character who is continually getting put on his butt, just constantly getting the crap kicked out of him, which is just so interesting. He gives us 2 really competent female point of view characters who are just machines. One in particular, Orca in particular. If you've read the book, you know Orca gets stuff done. Much in the same way as Malazan. I actually thought a lot about Malazan while I was reading this, is that women and men are very much equal. You see just as many men and women fighting in this culture. There's not really a hierarchy of the sexes, which was kind of interesting to read, and you don't see a lot of that in fantasy, and so it was just kind of refreshing to get 2 really strong female perspectives of very capable characters, and I loved that. I think Varg was an interesting character to me because I love reading about found families, people who don't really have a place, don't really fit in, and they find that. So that's always cool. I love reading about good friendships, and he kind of finds that with a character later on in the book. Gets a close friend that he just didn't really even know he needed. And then also he just gave us the most chapters with the Bloodsworn. Basically all the chapters with the Bloodsworn, and I think the Bloodsworn are just really, really cool and a super interesting idea. I could rant about Varg a little more, but I should probably move on. I'm gonna talk about Orca next because I think that she is clearly the fan favorite, and I totally get why. I think Orca deserves that recognition. She's super well written. Again, you get kind of a little bit of a vengeance arc in there. It's also another one of those tropes that I really love. I heard somebody compare her to like Wolverine in the Logan movie, or I kind of thought of, what's the cowboy's name in that one movie, that Western? What is that Western? Or Joel from The Last of Us. That I love the grizzled old veteran mentor character that has to guide and take care of someone who is much younger, or is just guarding someone. I don't know. Basically The Last of Us, the Joel and Ellie dynamic, or man, it's gonna bother me that I can't think the name of that Western because I've seen it. But anyway, John Gwynne writes that really well. And I love that is the approach that he took to Orca's character, because since Orca is so competent and so capable of destroying other people, just deleting people, it's so nice that John Gwynne gives her a balancing component, I guess, in some side characters who come on this journey with her. And I think it made Orca's chapters a lot more fun for me to read than, you know, because I love John Gwynne's action. He writes really great, brutal, fast-paced action. There's some awesome fight scenes in this book. But I think the scenes that I almost enjoyed more than Orca just going to town on people were probably the scenes where she was being held back or having to use some deep cunning and thinking through a situation or thinking about the best way to get into a position to better wreck people. And being forced into that position by these supporting characters was just a lot more interesting to read, I think, than just having every Orca chapter be, and then I slaughtered these people. I love Orca. The ending of the book, I mean, literally the last paragraph of that book, I texted some of my friends and I was like, I think the last paragraph of this book just made it one of my favorite books that I've ever read. Elvar. Elvar was the one I wanted to talk about because she, from the beginning, was the character that I didn't enjoy as much. Even though she probably had the most like fast-paced, gripping first chapter with kind of the stuff that happens on the volcanic island, and you get a lot of the plot hooks, especially looking back from the beginning, or from the end, having read the whole book, and then moving back to the beginning. I don't know, there was just something about her at the beginning that I just didn't really like that much. But once they arrive at a certain location and an aspect of the plot is revealed, specifically about who she is, who Grind is, I found Elvar so much more interesting. And this dynamic of her wanting to prove herself, it made a lot more sense. And so I think that it actually kind of redeemed those early chapters where you didn't really know what was going on with Elvar. I think that the twist that he gives you, and it's not super far into the book, it's not a late book reveal, he just kind of gives it to you there. I think it like drops who she is at the end of like end of a chapter, and then the next chapter they're arriving at that location. I'm trying to be really vague because I don't know how much I want to talk about spoilers in these videos. I guess the book's been out for a year, so if you haven't read it, you should. But yeah, Elvar is somebody who by the end of the book really grew on me. I mean, all three of the POV characters, there's not a single one that I disliked. What else did I want to talk about? Oh, the magic system. I haven't talked about magic at all. From what I understand, there's like two main forms of magic in this series. You have the Seether Witches and the Galdermen, who have some form of rune magic that they use, which is more of your traditional wizardy, witchy, sorcery type magic. But the magic that is way more interesting, in my opinion, is the magic that kind of revolves around these dead gods themselves. Their presence is still felt in a number of different ways through beings called the Tainted, which basically are humans who have the blood of these gods running through their veins. To have powers based on which god is your dad or mom or parent is just super cool to me. And so now I feel like I almost need to read some Norse mythology to kind of understand who Berser is, or Ulfdir. Wow, I actually opened right up to a page where it was like right smack dab in the center. That was cool. Or Rada, or all of these different animal-based gods, and the different powers that people are getting based on whose blood is running in their veins. It's just super, super cool. So I don't really think I'm gonna do like stars or reviews or anything. I don't feel qualified enough to review a book. I was trying to do like Goodreads and stuff, and I was just like, I don't really like, I pretty much have liked everything that I've read, and so I don't want to be the guy who's always like, this was 4 stars, this was 5 stars. If I don't like something, I usually don't finish it, which I know makes some people cringe, but this book just really hooked me. And so I definitely think that if you like Norse mythology, if you like epic fantasy, if you like revenge plots, but you also like friendship and found family type stuff, definitely pick up Shadow of the Gods. The setting is great, the magic is super interesting, and all of the characters are really, really well developed and really well done. I think the plot just moves along at such a great pace. This was the fastest book that I've read since I've been reading again. I think Goodreads said I finished it in a week, which is fast for me. I'm not the fastest reader, and so I definitely just can't recommend Shadow of the Gods enough, and if you haven't read it, you definitely should. Thanks for stopping by and watching me rant about a book. If you want to see more rants, definitely subscribe and like the video, and we'll catch you in the next one.